All right. Hello, everybody. I'm James Barnum. I'm here with eat2perform.com. I am joined by the lovely and talented April Blackford.
Hi, everybody.
We were just discussing cracklins. I don't even know what cracklins are, really.
They're they're like a little gift from God. They're really delicious. But
But
anyway,
what?
we're not that's supposed to be a secret, James. We're not supposed to talk about that.
Okay. And I apologize if I'm a giant face right now. Attendees, I have to thank you for joining us. This is going to be recorded, and you'll be able to review it later. We'll have a link in the forums. So if we don't get to your question, you know, or if you missed something, then you can go into the forum and kind of touch base on what we talked about. So to kick things off, I'm going to ask you guys to submit any and all questions that you have, whether they're completely specific or completely broad. If you want help setting up macronutrients, for instance, you want some kind of idea of how you should coordinate your nutrition around your training, or you have like a general question about nutrition, training, anything really. So just let us know, and I'll get to them as soon as possible. And actually, April, we have our first question from Jennifer Solino.
All right.
She says, "Hi, my name is Jennifer, and I have a question regarding control days. I've been doing ETP for about 7 months, and I love it. I feel great, but I've put on a few pounds. I've recently tweaked a few things with the advice from April." Good, then this is like directed directly at you. Haha. "My question is, how crucial are control days for fat loss? My control days are normally on the weekend because I don't usually work out, but oftentimes I feel like I drink or eat out a lot, so it's hard to have a perfect control day. Is this really hindering my fat loss?" And April, I'm going to let you go ahead.
I would be curious to know if you're actually eating at a slight deficit or if you are eating at your TDEE on your training days. The answer is yes, you could be very well. If your goal is fat loss, you are going to need, if you are trying to get your weight to taper down and to drop body fat, you are going to need to be in some sort of deficit at some point. I do see that it's a trend. A lot of people where they work out Monday through Friday and then they have their control days on the weekends. A lot of times it's difficult to adhere to the control days because of social situations and because of alcohol and going out to eat and cookouts and parties and that type of thing. Typically what a lot of people, I don't know if it's a situation where you can actually switch up one of your days and add a control day during the week and then throw the training day on the weekend. I've dealt with a lot of members who have been eating to perform for as long as you have, and a lot of times we'll take the strategy of kind of lowering the carbs down more to a moderate level during the week and then having a higher carb day on the weekend where it will fit into the social, the social gathering or the social function, that type of thing. So, but ultimately, depending on how much you're going over or how much alcohol you're partaking in, it very well could, basically erase the control day. What are your thoughts, James?
My thoughts are, I don't know if everyone's seeing this, but my camera's going insane. But
It looks fine.
technical stuff aside, yeah, if you're putting yourself into a situation where you're going to overeat on those days, then you're kind of missing the point. You do want to kind of arrange those things around days where you can have more control over what you're doing. And I think unless you're eating at a deficit all the time, then those days are absolutely necessary to lose fat. Because what we're trying to get you to do is slowly recompose so that you can maintain performance and build muscle and lose fat at the same time. So things don't happen quite as quickly. And if those are the days where you're allowing yourself to enter into a calorie deficit, and the cumulative deficit over the course of the week, months, or even going into years is going to build up, but you're not actually in a calorie deficit on those days, then it's not going to work at all. So my suggestion would be to ensure that those days are on a day where it's manageable. And let's see. I hope that helps. If you need a follow-up on that, please go ahead and ask. I'm going to move on to another question, though, from Connie Christensen. She asks, what specific carbs do you recommend before and after a lifting workout? And I'm going to go ahead and lead with this one. My favorite carbohydrate source is oats. I like to take oats and cook them up and blend them up and put them in a whey protein shake and then drink that about 30 to 40 minutes, maybe an hour before I work out. And if I'm doing a post-workout shake, I'll do essentially the same thing. But depending upon what your schedule is set up like, if you're doing, say, a really long workout or you're doing 2-a-days, then I would suggest going for something like an engineered supplement like Vitargo, because it'll get into your bloodstream faster and be turned into glycogen faster. It'll just be available as energy faster. So, April, I'd be interested to hear what your thoughts are.
I agree with the oats pre-workout. They're a great source. I like grits because it's not as heavy on my stomach. It seems to kind of sit a little bit better. I do eat oatmeal daily, though. I love oatmeal. Grits, sweet potatoes, oats, granola. I know Paul uses granola with Greek yogurt mixed in pre-workout. Anything pretty much slower digesting. Post-workout, I would recommend something a little faster digesting. Rice cereals, spotted bananas, ripe plantains, dates. You can actually, there's the medjool dates, which are really large. 2 or 3 of those will get you up to 50 grams of carbs, surprisingly. So anything faster digesting is what I would recommend post-workout. I usually use a protein shake and Rice Krispie treats. So.
Yeah, that sounds good to me.
Because it's tasty, yeah.
Yeah, and that's something you have to consider too. I mean, I'm really big on this. My eating is affected by working out. Like, it kind of kills my appetite. So I always recommend that, you know, if you are having a difficult time getting your carbohydrates in, and it's not necessarily about what's optimal, and that's a word that you can throw around, but it's going to be dependent upon the person so much that it's kind of hard to just give a 1-1 answer. But, you know, you do want to go for something that you enjoy. That's kind of the beauty of carbohydrates, is that they're very tasty. So what would be best for you might be a mixture of fruit and some other starchy carbohydrate source. But what might be best for someone else might be to take a maltodextrin supplement or Vitargo, or, you know, it could really be anything. So what sits well on your stomach and what makes you feel good? You have to ask yourself those questions. I hope that helps, Connie. And if you have any follow-ups, don't be afraid to ask. Anybody with any questions, no matter what the question is, go ahead and ask us. I'm going to move on to another question from Mary Dietrich. And she asks, is there a time frame to eat protein and carbs after a workout? She says 1 to 2 hours post-workout. And essentially, a lot of the stuff that we talk about when it comes to nutrient timing around training is to optimize performance during the workout so that you can lift more weight, do more repetitions, do more work, which is going to elicit a stronger signal to adapt to the workout, because I'm sure most of us have been in a situation where we've done too little work and not gotten stronger the next week, not seen any body composition changes. So that's what pre-workout stuff is for. And post-workout, you're essentially trying to turn on anabolism and build more muscle tissue and get all of the positive adaptations that can come out of it rather than the negative adaptations. But as far as the timing on that comes, there's very conflicting research. We usually do recommend that within an hour you have a carbohydrate source and a protein source, usually a 2-to-1 ratio, 2 carbs, 1 protein, so like 50 grams of carbohydrate, 50 grams of carbohydrate, 25 grams of protein. But the ratio will change and the time will change. You really have to find what's comfortable for you, because some people can go right into a workout after they eat. Some people can go right into eating after they work out. but that isn't the same for everybody. So I would suggest, take that 1 to 2 hour window and experiment with it, because in my opinion, the closer the better, because that's technically going to give you more energy while you're working out so that you can sustain performance. But it's going to depend on so many factors, especially the composition of the meal, that it's hard to say. But I guess those are guidelines. What do you think, April?
I agree. I agree with exactly what you're saying. I usually try to aim within an hour. I think within an hour you're fine. Obviously sometimes things happen with life and you get busy and you get held up, and if it's a situation where you don't eat for 2 or 3 hours, one day, it's not like your muscles are going to fall off or anything, for one day. I certainly, I personally wouldn't make it a habit to wait that long, because generally post workout, that's the optimal time when your cells are going to absorb all the nutrients, after you work out. So I would recommend within an hour, but like what you said, you can obviously experiment and may not have any issues in waiting 2 hours. So.
Yeah, and as far as the effect that you're going to get, it's going to be such a small difference for your average person. Now, if you're you're about to try and get yourself to a CrossFit regional event, or if you're a weightlifter, if you're going to the next level of competition, so to speak, after you're kind of done being an amateur and a beginner, then those things can really add up over the course of years. But worrying about whether or not, within 15 minutes you had your post-workout shake to make the post-workout anabolic window and maximize your gains, it's kind of not worth it unless you're very competitive. So take that into consideration as well. I'm going to move on to, well, actually, Mary has a follow-up. She says, sometimes I end up doing back-to-back workouts and I'm exhausted halfway. What can you recommend for me to eat and finish the workout? If you're doing back-to-back workouts, then you need fast digesting carbohydrates. And we plug it all the time, but I'll use this as an anecdote. I have a powerlifting meet this coming weekend, and I have to cut weight for it. So I'm eating low carb right now, and I'm drinking a lot of water, and my calories are reduced because I'm essentially just sitting on my butt waiting to go to the meet and weigh in, and then I'll refuel and get myself ready to hit some PRs. But when I am ready to refuel, I'm going to go for the fastest carbohydrate source that I have, and that's going to be Vitargo. I'll probably go through a whole gallon of it the night before the meet. So I can't recommend anything except for that, other than whole foods. Like, I really love oats. If you blend oats up, cooked oats, they're very thick, they're very viscous, and your stomach is just going to suck it all in and get it into your bloodstream as quickly as possible. But it also comes with some good fat. It also comes with a little bit of protein. There's some fiber in there, so it'll help mediate the insulin response. So it's like a win-win scenario. But if they're back-to-back, then I would actually try sipping on some Vitargo intra-workout. I know, April, that you do intra-workout carbohydrates very often, right?
I second the Vitargo. I was actually going to say the same thing. If she's doing back-to-back workouts, she would need to make sure that she had a good, wholesome pre-workout meal. I would suggest whole foods, and then sipping on the Vitargo intra-workout, having enough to sip on just basically throughout both sessions, and that should sustain her energy levels throughout, and then have her post-workout meal. And also, if she is sipping the Vitargo, she's doing half a scoop to 1 scoop during the course of both sessions. That post-workout window, obviously if she gets busy or she has something to do, I don't think it's going to be as big of a deal, because she used the intra-workout carbs, as if, she trained for 2 hours and then waited 2 hours to eat type thing.
Mm-hmm. Yep, I completely agree. If you have a nice pre-workout meal, that should carry you through. But if you're doing very high volumes of training back-to-back like that, then you will kind of hit a wall, and that's where stuff like Vitargo does come in handy. So essentially what I said, if you're really pushing it, if you really want to get to the next level, whether it's in competition or it's for your own personal sake, then Vitargo is pretty much where it's at. And I hope that answers your question, Mary. I'm going to move on to a question from my friend Benny Husband. He says, what advice would you give to someone trying to start a career as a nutrition coach? not on a scale as large as ETP, but more like a personal trainer. And I have some experience doing that. So does April. My suggestion is going to be to find a niche to work with. Doing distance coaching is very easy if you're good at marketing yourself on the internet and you're good at making connections with other trainers so that they might be able to give you a shout out. They might allow you to write something for their blog. But as far as doing it in person, that changes who you can work with. If you're good and you have good references and you get a hold of the right people, you can work with pretty much whoever you want through distance coaching. But as far as doing things locally, unless you're in a very highly populated area and there are a lot of active athletic people, you're going to be looking at working with your average everyday people. So first thing, figure out what your niche is going to be. If you want to work with average Joes and soccer moms and so on and so forth, and that can include anyone that could include CrossFitters all the way to people that are doing, you know, the typical fitness stuff where they're just working out in the gym, maybe not even using barbells and doing a lot of cardio. It doesn't really matter what the exercise modality is. You can help them. And as far as acquiring education to do that, I'm Precision Nutrition certified. If I move my head a little bit, you can see that blue plaque up there. I think that's a great course, and in fact, pretty much everything that we teach is kind of like along the same philosophy. It's results-based. We don't really care if someone says this is good or this is bad. We're really more concerned with what the food you're going to eat, the exercise you're going to do, is actually doing. So, you know, there are diets out there that are pretty insane. They'll put you on low carb or low fat or no fat. They'll focus on nutrient timing way too much. They won't come out right and say, look, calories do matter. And they're not really based on science, or at least current science. And they're just outdated, and they ultimately aren't. They're not going to get you the result because it's kind of like throwing spaghetti at a wall. He asks, I am on the pre-sale list for PN's next cert in September. You recommend it? I absolutely do, Benny. I think I have friends that have done NASM's nutrition cert, and I've read the training manual and stuff, and I'd say Precision Nutrition is going to give you a very solid real-world base. And if you do want to go on and become a level 2 certified coach, then it's essentially them setting you up, or you setting yourself up with a client, so that you can have your approach reviewed, and it's just a tremendous value. And of course, signing up for the pre-sale gets you a little discount.
Discount, yeah, gets you a big discount comparatively speaking. I'll just add my 2 cents in. I think you hit the nail on the head with, you got to find your niche. You got to have something, you know, you got to find your niche to populate in your audience. And I do think one of the big keys is, you know, having the social connections and getting, you know, the connections on the internet or wherever, shout outs, you know, feature, you know, like what you said, being featured on web pages and websites, you know, anything like that to get your name out there, to get who you are. I've seen a lot of coaches who will, on Facebook, there'll be, you know, certain popular groups in there, and they will actually frequent those groups and help people, you know, kind of give free advice type thing. And then, you know, once you help someone for free for so long, eventually they're private messaging you and wanting to hire you and so forth and so on, that type of thing. I've seen a lot of people get a lot of business like that too as well. So it just varies.
Yeah, I think it would be important to point out that the way that April and Paul and I know each other, and the genesis of Eat to Perform and how we started working together, was essentially we got together in a food group that Paul had started, and we were, I mean, April was jacked and she knew what she was talking about.
I was the queen of food porn. I was the queen of food porn. I posted all the best food porn.
And I mean, I'm not a doctor or anything, but when I'm not exhausted and I'm not full of coffee, I'm pretty intelligent, and I would go on there and I would just, I would discuss research with people and how it applied to what we were all trying to accomplish, which at that point was unfortunately just to get shredded, and we weren't really concerned about performance. But as things went, that's how we've developed kind of the connections that we have on the internet. And I mean, if not for the internet, I wouldn't have branched out and started doing what I'm doing locally. I wouldn't be coaching people for powerlifting meets. I wouldn't be so active in the strength community in Florida. I didn't have the cojones to do it. So I'd recommend, you do both. Educate yourself, keep up on topics, make sure that you can kind of practice what you preach. Make sure that, if you're going to give someone advice and you don't have a master's degree in exercise physiology or something like that, that you can back it up and that you're personable and all of that sort of stuff. But as far as what I talked about first with niches, don't pigeonhole yourself into something. I mean, as much as I would really love to just work with Olympic weightlifters and powerlifters and CrossFit athletes, if someone comes to you and they just want to lose a little bit of weight, don't turn it down. Don't turn anybody down, and try to work with people for what they can afford to spend, because that's another big part of Eat to Perform. We want to make sure that people have access to coaching sessions like this where we can answer questions. And I mean, it's an extremely broad range of topics. Like, this definitely ties in. Anyone that really wants to get as good as they possibly can at managing their own nutrition is eventually going to get to the point where they're interested in helping other people. And it'll kind of be a natural consequence when someone sees you and you've got your six-pack and you're deadlifting 500 pounds or you're clean and jerking your body weight, which, that's not going to get you into the Olympics, but it's a feat of strength that your average person just cannot accomplish. And when people see you doing that, they're going to ask you for advice, and you may as well brush up on what brush up on your information and learn how to communicate it to people, whether for free or for pay. So hopefully that answers your question, Benny. If you got any more questions, go ahead and ask me, especially on Facebook, and I'll update you on my cut. Yeah, so I'm going to move on to another question. If anyone else that's in attendance has any more, you're welcome, any more questions regarding nutrition, training, let's just stay out of love life stuff. But anything like that, go ahead and ask. If you I
can give good love life advice.
I know you can, but then I'll be over here and I'll be expecting myself to say something, and I'll be like, I'm 27, I don't have kids, I've had like 3 girlfriends, I don't know what I'm talking about. But anyways, we have a question from Kevin. He says, I'm planning on adding an extra control day each week to accelerate fat loss. I'm probably going to have back-to-back control days. Should both control day macros be the same, or should the first control day be slightly less since I'm not working out the following day? April, I'm going to let you go first because I feel like I
would say typically when you have the back-to-back control days, majority of the time, not always, but I see a trend a lot of the time after 2 back-to-back control days when you're going into that next workout day, it kind of sucks a little bit. I would recommend situations like that when you have 2 back-to-back control days is the last training day going into your control day doing a semi-control day, basically reducing your carbs down a little bit, loading around your workout, whereas if you normally may hit 350 grams of carbs this day, maybe hit 275 or even 250 on the last workout day going into the control day, and then the first control day being a full control day, and then the second one not dropping as low in your carbs, maybe going a little bit higher. Normally if you would drop it to 125 or 150, maybe go to 175 on the last control day, aiming for at least 50, 60 grams of starchy carbs within your within dinner, and then that should help you going into the first training day after that.
I'm on the same page essentially, and that brings up something I'd like to discuss: training volume on your next day. Now I know that if you're working out at a box and someone else is programming your workouts, I mean, someone else programs my workouts. So as far as everything goes, I know it's hard to do, but if you know the next day something really difficult is coming up, then you might want to even, you know, push it a little bit higher than that. Maybe throughout the day, come like 75% of the way to what your normal carbohydrate levels would be. But if it's like an easy workout the next day, you could even go in the other direction, and you could have 2 back-to-back control days with the same macros. But I would pay attention to that and pay attention to how you feel the day before your first control day. If it was a workout that knocked you on your butt and you need to recover, then you have to take that into consideration, and you might want to have both of those days be a little bit higher than normal. But if you're really looking for fat loss, then that becomes another discussion too, I guess.
Exactly. I started saying it also could be a situation where he could semi-control the last training day and then do 2 full control days. And if the next training day is actually later in the day, then he can load carbs a little bit earlier than an hour or 2 hours prior to his training, and likely probably be fueled up enough to, you know, to perform decently well. Obviously, if your primary goal is fat loss, you're not gonna kill every workout anyway, you know. So.
And as far as not killing the workout, in my opinion, and this is the opinion of a lot of people that are more involved in physique and bodybuilding and events where really the goal is fat loss. The goal is to achieve a specific condition and be really, really, really lean for a specific day. You have to reduce training volume. The amount of work that you can really get done is going to go down as a natural consequence because you're not providing as much energy in. But as far as intensity is concerned, say you go in and there's a WOD and you're supposed to do something, you're supposed to say snatch 80% or 90% or something every minute on the minute. Well, it would be a mistake for you to go in there and reduce your training intensity down to like 70% just because you feel tired. This is kind of going to lead into Mary's next question. But you want to go in there and you want to hit that 90%, but maybe do it every minute on the second minute and kind of cut the volume down in half for that movement. And then if you're supposed to get 10 repetitions, you get 5 repetitions, which is still going to give you an adequate training effect no matter what. If you look at like Prilepin's his chart, that was essentially a Soviet researcher that when he pulled a team together to look at all of the elite sportsmen at the time over the course of like a decade. So it was this huge pool of information and research that was based on real-world stuff, and they figured out that 4 repetitions at 90% is about all you really need. So, especially if you're in an energy deficit, pay attention to stuff like that, and then if you do conditioning after that, you don't want to reduce the intensity of the conditioning, which might actually mean reducing the weight so that you can focus on the metabolic effect that you get and get through the workout faster and, you know, sweat your butt off and feel like you're working really hard. So I'm going to move on to the next question. That kind of does lead into what Mary's asking. I hope that helps, Kevin. If you have any more questions, you need a elaboration upon that, go ahead and ask. He says, cool, thanks. You're welcome. And anybody else listening, questions, go ahead, throw them at us. But I'm going to move on to Mary's next question. She says, in Olympic lifting, how do you deal with the mental obstacles? Once I reach a certain number, I start to waver, hesitate, leading to failure. What can you suggest as a tip to get over that? I know I'm stronger because my clean and jerk is higher now. My snatch numbers are just not moving because I get scared. Thanks in advance for answering my question. And you are welcome, Mary. I'm gonna just say I'm going through this right now. I missed a squat. I wanted to open with 355 at my meet this weekend, and I was just like scared of it. You can see in the video that I took, I'm shaking. I'm hesitant about what I'm going to do, and I missed the lift. So I'm dropping my squat opener for my meet this weekend by 20 pounds unless I feel better. So looking at that in context, what could I have done, and what could you do to better prepare yourself for that lift that kind of scares you a little bit? Well, as far as snatch goes, look at what you can overhead squat. Look at what you can snatch balance. If those numbers aren't high and you don't feel confident with them, especially at the bottom of the overhead squat, and you don't feel confident dropping into the hole with the snatch balance, or if you don't do either of those exercises on a regular basis, those are what you'd call special preparatory exercises, and they're to develop weak points. And lifting's physical, but as you know, as I know, as anyone that's really gotten under a heavy barbell relative to their weight, of course, anyone that's ever gotten under a weight that scares them knows that it's not all physical. A lot of it is in your head. And if you get distracted or you get scared, then you may not fire off a muscle that you're supposed to at a given point in time, and you're going to miss the lift. So special preparatory exercises, I would focus on those. So increasing your overhead squat, maybe pausing at the bottom of it, and increasing your snatch balance. But you'll also want to kind of look at what you're doing, because as you will eventually find out, if you train long enough, anyone will, it's really hard to increase more than one lift at a time. I know that Paul, he focused almost entirely on deadlifting for like a year and hit a 475-pound deadlift at his first powerlifting meet. And the training cycle that I've been involved in right now, my squat's gone up like 100 pounds over the course of 3 months. But my bench press and deadlift are in the toilet. They aren't going anywhere. So my next training cycle, I'm going to modify the frequency of my practice on the bench press and deadlift and the exercises that I'm using to try to develop them and just maintain my squat. So I'm going to let April go ahead and expand upon that if she can.
I know typically normally I don't do Olympic lifting. I do, sometimes I'll throw in power cleans for, squat cleans, power cleans for cardio aspect, but other than that, but I'm pretty decent on those numbers. But anyway, in regards to the mental aspect, I have the same thing like what you were saying in regards to the squat. Sometimes if I'm going for, a PR on my deadlift or squat or anything like that, it seems like if I think about it too much, you psych yourself out. You psych yourself out, you get kind of nervous and you get kind of weak, and like what you were saying, you don't fire the muscles, I found that if I walk up to do the deadlift, if I sit there and I stare at the bar and I start to set up and I get ready, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to pick it up. I'm going to fail at it. But whereas if you just walk up to it, you set up in your position and you just pull it. Just do it. Don't think about it. Just do it. And then 9 out of 10 times, then I'll pull it then. So it's kind of like you got to get the mental aspect. You got to, it's almost like jumping out of an airplane. If you stand at the door and you're waiting, chances are you're gonna wuss out and you're gonna, step back. Whereas before you can even think about it, you just got to jump out. You just got to do it. So.
Yeah, and a lot of that's going to be just doing it is kind of like a hard thing to suggest to somebody just to do it, but you can just do it. You're repeating the same movement over and over and over again, hundreds of times every month. So what you kind of want to focus on, so that you can just do it, so that it becomes automatic, is making sure that when you do approach the bar, say to snatch, that you just walk up there, take a breath, and you treat every repetition, whether it's an empty barbell or a 10-pound bumper plate on each side or something like that, whether it's a light barbell or a heavy barbell, treat it like that's the last time you're going to ever snatch, and you have to make it the best possible snatch that you've ever done. And although you're putting yourself under that pressure, if it's a light weight and you walk up to the bar, take your breath, get down, take your grip, set your shoulders, set your posture, take another breath, and perform the snatch, and you do that hundreds of times versus maybe walking up casually one day, looking down at it, and then turning your head to talk to a friend. Always make sure the ritual before the lift commences is exactly the same, because that's what's going to set your mindset. And even when you fail, you'll come to a point where you're just like, oh, I failed. I don't even care. because I know what I did wrong. I know that I walked up to the bar, got down, and set my grip, but it was maybe a pointer finger too wide, or I was down there for 5 seconds instead of 3 seconds. All those little things are going to make a difference in the end. So I hope that answers your question, Mary. If anyone else has any more questions, we're out of the pool that I have available, and we've got another 25.
Back to the to doing the lift. How many PRs have you hit where you miscalculated the weight by accident? A lot of people have done that.
I've never done that because
you have never done that, James, ever.
Never, ever. In the past 3 years.
I've done that before, where I keep a log of training where I write everything down, and then I go back. I remember doing. This has been like, I don't know, this, and it's funny because now I can do them just super easy. But this has been like 2 years ago. I remember going to do bent over barbell rows, and I think the highest that I had done before was like 80 pounds, 85 pounds. And I miscalculated and I put on 95 pounds, and then I realized that after the fact, it was psychological where, you write it down, you work up to your numbers, and you're doing reps at, say 85, and then think, oh, okay, well this is where I need to stay for a little while, and then, you miscalculate and it was easy. And ironically, it's kind of funny because 95 is super, of course, years after the fact, super easy now, but. I've done that a few times. Not as much anymore now as whenever I first started lifting, but
I find that, and I had to turn the light on. I realized that
I was wondering because you just kept getting darker and darker.
It was light out when we started. It's crazy, but that's actually a technique that you can use though. If I had my way, I would never load a barbell myself. If I was going for a max snatch attempt or a clean jerk or bench press or squat or anything like that, I would have someone else load the bar for me, and whether they deliberately or not misload it by 2.5 or 5 pounds or something like that, once you do get over that hump, it's like having a weight lifted from you. Pun intended. For example, I don't know why, but I recently got over a hump where putting 275 pounds on a bar and squatting, a couple months ago I could only do that maybe like one time. And I've squatted more weight than that, but it was like when I got to that point, that's where I felt like I have to put a belt on. That's where I felt like I have to be really careful. I have to go and call a spotter over here. And it wasn't until I just put the weight on, took a big breath, did it, and as soon as I hit the top, dropped right back down, hit another rep, and then got a total of 5 repetitions, that I was like, okay, what was so scary about that? And it took doing it one time every week for like 6 weeks until my coach told me, do it 5 times. And I got over it. And the same thing's happening now with 315 pounds. Today I've squatted more than 315 pounds, but today I did it, and I thought to myself, I could totally do that like 5 or 6 times. So the next time I squat after my meet, I'm totally going to go for reps with 315. And all of that aside, if you can get someone to load a barbell for you, you don't have to feel the weight. You don't have to actually you don't have to internalize it. It becomes this external factor, and you're just doing the movement, and you're dealing with the consequences of it, and you can focus on moving rather than loading. Rather than moving weight, you're just moving your body through space with a barbell in your hands. A favorite strength athlete of mine, he was world's strongest man. He was a very, very, very high-level competitive lifter in the 80s, Bill Katzmeyer. If you can look him up and read any of his stuff, he talks about the mental approach to lifting. And that's one of his big things, is to have other people load plates and always move the weight as fast as possible, as aggressively as possible. Never lift a light weight like it's actually light. Don't just, don't fiddle around. Treat it like it's the heaviest weight you're going to lift, and you'll condition yourself to treat everything like it's light, and you won't be afraid. Hopefully hopefully these suggestions are useful. April, do you have anything else to add?
No.
All right. Well, we don't have any more questions right now. What do we do?
I don't
Oh,
know.
I know. We do what we normally do at the beginning of the webinar,
We
and
just
we
have a
ask
chat.
each other's, "Hey, April, how's things been going?"
Everything's been going great. You know, I met the WWE wrestlers came to my gym, so
Mm.
got to work out with them and talk to them, get some pictures, which was kind of cool. You know, my son was quite impressed. I actually took him with me to the gym, and he got scared, went to the daycare door, and my son just turned 9, and majority of the kids that are in the daycare are all smaller, and he just looked at me and shook his head and said, "No, I'm not going in there." And
Aw.
I was like, you have to go in there. I was like, what if the wrestlers come, because they were coming into town? And he was like, no, mm-mm. So I ended up going and dropping him off at my husband's office. And as soon as I got back to the gym, sure enough, they were all there. He was quite upset that he didn't get to meet them, but so that was kind of that was kind of exciting. It was just exciting. I'm not really into wrestling. Let me add that, but my son is, so it was kind of exciting for him.
It may seem kind of weird, but I'm not really into wrestling. But I pretty much always get together and watch WrestleMania every year with some friends. I don't know who is wrestling. I don't know what's going on, but it's entertaining. And they're not necessarily performance athletes. I'd liken it to kind of like bodybuilding, where it's all about spectacle. It's all about the show. It's all about the extremes that they're going to for entertainment's sake. But it's not necessarily about pushing the human body as far as it can go. But they're increasingly becoming more and more dependent upon their physicality because of the rise in popularity of actual combat sports.
Hmm.
So wrestling's had to evolve, and I'm pretty excited about that. But
Whenever it's kind of funny because whenever you see it in person, obviously, we know it's fake, majority of it's fake, but when you see it in person, it's almost like, you can see where the fist just happens to graze the head. It seems like on TV they put the camera at the right angle where it looks like they're getting punched in the head, and you can see them whispering, like, oh, watch out, I'm getting ready to punch you, type thing. So it's kind of funny.
it's performance art.
Absolutely.
But I will say though that even though it is performance art, those guys are usually very strong, and they usually have to adhere to very specific diets. And I used to, when I was younger, I thought like I'd actually like to watch someone kick someone's ass. Like this is fake. But I've realized more and more and more that it's kind of like the illusion. Not only is it entertaining, but you can't support that illusion, especially nowadays when there's so much expected of them. To support that illusion, it can't all be fake. I know, for instance, like John Cena, he can squat in the low 600s, and The Rock's very, very strong, and he's obviously very serious about his diet and everything. So I got to have respect for those guys.
Absolutely. Even though, majority of it, like what you said, is not, is not real. They're, they do still get hit. A lot of them get seriously injured, injured a lot, like in real life, so it's kind of crappy.
I mean, they're not. The fight might be rigged, but they're still getting slammed onto tables and thrown out of the ring,
Exactly.
and still getting their asses kicked.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
just whoever wins.
Did you follow the CrossFit Games?
Unfortunately, I have been so busy with my own meat preparation that I didn't get to watch anything. I know Rich won, I know Camille won, but I didn't get to actually watch any of the events, and I kind of feel bad about that.
I
'Cause I-
watched some of them. It was pretty awesome to watch. Danny Horan, she did very well in the snatch ladder. I was watching that, and so did Elizabeth. Elizabeth like killed it. She came in first on the top ladder. She was just beasting the what is it, the squat cleans.
yeah, she's very
Squat cleans.
strong.
Yeah, she was a beast. It was awesome.
And I saw that Danny came in 18th, which is, I mean, that's really cool. Like, you have to put that into context. if she's the 18th fittest woman in the entire world, that's ridiculous.
Awesome. Yeah, absolutely.
We've been able to help her kind of get there. I mean, she's doing all the work, but as far as nutrition's concerned, we've had a little bit of a hand in that, especially Paul, because he's usually her first in line, and I'm glad that she associates herself with us. We're lucky. But we have a question from Ashley Hine. She says, okay, I just having started reading today, listening to this first webinar, I'm wondering how specific the questions can be. Right now, I'm trying to figure out my macros for the workday control days. And for us to help you with any of that stuff, Ashley, I'm going to need a little bit of information about your body weight, height, age, stuff like that, how often you work out especially, and what kind of training you're doing. If you're doing CrossFit, or if you're doing, maybe you're a bodybuilder, could happen. But if you can go ahead and send me a little bit of information about yourself, then we can totally help you set things up and give you some advice as to how to proceed. I'd also like to know, Ashley, what you were doing before Eat to Perform, because although it is nice to think that you can just come into something and clean slate, unfortunately your body doesn't work like that. So if you're coming from, this is very common for a lot of our customers and a lot of people that we work with, if you're coming from a low carbohydrate background, or you are coming from a chronic dieting background, then you're going to need different advice than people that are kind of coming from a period of extended overeating or something like that. So go ahead, give me whatever information you'd like to share, and we'll help you out. But Sarah has a question. She says, what is a healthy percentage of CrossFit versus lifting is best for gaining strength? And that's difficult to answer, because it kind of comes down to where you're starting at. If you're like me, I started lifting weights in my mid-20s, and I started being physical in my late 20s. It's kind of a mistake to focus on just lifting weights. So doing CrossFit WODs and lifting heavy, that's great. But I would say if you're a beginner, if you're within your first 5 years of development as an athlete, that the metabolic conditioning is very important. I would actually weigh that maybe like a 60-40, and then go through periods during the year. Excuse me. Go through periods during the year where you focus on strength. But CrossFit's essentially a general physical preparedness program, and it's going to let you get the engine built, so to speak, so that you can be strong, so that you can be fast, so that you can take the work that's required to get very strong. If you look at what I'm doing right now, although I'm a competitive powerlifter, I'm running tomorrow and I'm 3 days out from a meet, because it's absolutely vital for me to condition my legs and my aerobic system and develop that capacity so that I can get stronger. So I'm going to go with 60-40, but 60% conditioning and WODs, 40% focus on heavy weightlifting within your first 3 to 5 years. April, what do you think?
I think it's just dependent upon what our goals are. I think it's dependent upon what the programming is at her box as well. You know, if she wants to, if her sole focus is to gain strength and to gain muscle, you know, I think that she, for example, I think that she's going to have to deadlift heavy versus deadlifting 40% of her deadlift, you know, 30 times, you know, in a WOD. So, you know, if her box is programmed for a direct, you know, strength focus, I think she should be fine, and maybe adding in, you know, some stuff if she needs to. But for the most part, if it's just, you know, Paul and I have discussed this before, you know, some CrossFit boxes, it's just according to where they're located, and they're going to cater to the population. They're going to cater to, you know, if it's suburban housewives who just want to do cardio, you know, suburban housewives are not going to want to go in and deadlift 300 pounds. You know, it's going to scare the crap out of them, and they're going to run out and probably not come back. You know, whereas, you know, you got some fire-breathing women who, you know, want to get a 300-pound deadlift. You know, if that's your population, then they're probably going to have some programming that's more related to strength. So, you know, I think it's just dependent upon, you know, what the programming is and what you're doing.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's something really important to consider. Is if, you know, if your box is programming a way that you don't like, if you do want to focus on strength development, and I mean, you can do both at once. You absolutely should. You should never shy away from lifting heavy, but you should never shy away from doing aerobic cardio conditioning workouts either. But if they're not programming to suit your needs, then, you know, you kind of want to talk to them about that and see if maybe they can change things up a little bit, or they can let you kind of go on your own path, or at least, or perhaps provide you with some guidance as to what you should do. So if you're lucky enough to have a box that's open-minded and will let you spend more time on your strength work or more time on your conditioning work or whatever your goal is, then go for it. But you kind of are at the mercy of the programming, and it's not an unfortunate thing, because, like I said, I do believe very firmly in and this is more a broad application to any athletic endeavor, that the base has to be built first. And for CrossFit, that is doing WODs. But if you were a bodybuilder, for instance, you were focused on strength, you're going to need to do a lot of different movements to condition the muscles. Like, we make fun of doing curls. We make fun of doing triceps extensions and stuff like that, these little isolation movements and pec flies. But a lot of that stuff is actually very, very useful to make sure that those muscles can handle the workload that you're going to subject them to. So that counts as general physical preparedness, or GPP, too. But I would say talk to your coaches and communicate your goals to them, because they're ultimately going to know what's best for you. And if everyone is like, look, we really want to get stronger, but you're programming these cardio workouts, then you can definitely kind of move things in that direction, because CrossFit is a community. Boxes are community centers for the athletes to train out of them. I'll stop rambling so much, April. I apologize. But my box, I have a world record holder, masters lifter named David Earp, and since he's become more active there, they have started doing powerlifting classes and started doing more strength-focused workouts. So it can absolutely happen. You kind of have to, you know, let them know what you want. I hope that answers your question. I am going to move on to another question, because Ashley's got her information to us. So thank you, Sarah. If you need a follow-up, go ahead and ask, please. All right. Ashley says she's 5'6", 42 years old, 155 pounds. She started CrossFit in May, 4 times a week. Prior to that, she spent 3 years going from 185 pounds, 40% body fat, to 160 pounds, 33% body fat, with body weight training, functional movement, and some light cardio. Since March, she's gone from 33% body fat to 25% body fat, with a diet of about 1,800 calories, approximately 200 grams of protein, 160 to 170 grams of carbs, and 40 to 50 grams of fat. So about 45% protein, 35% carbs, and 20% fat. And she has given us pretty much all the information that we need, I guess. So I'm going to let you go first, April, and give your 2 cents.
Oh, wait a minute. I'm going to run the numbers real quick. I see. What is her goal, or what are her primary goals? Is it to?
She says it's plateauing, and I can't sleep very well. Ashley, what is your primary goal? Are you focused on becoming a competitive athlete, or are you doing CrossFit for fun? She wants to get stronger, leaner, more muscular. So would you say that your emphasis right now is on aesthetics, or is strength more important to you? Is performance more important to you? Or do you really, if you had to pick one or the two right now, would you pick to look better or to perform better. Because ultimately that's going to dictate the advice that we give you. Let's see though. Well, so that we can keep things moving, regardless of oh, there we go. Sorry. I love the lifting portion. Love getting stronger. All right. So if you love getting stronger, then I like your training frequency, and I mean, you have already you've already transformed yourself at this point. She says she'd rather not increase body fat though. Now, where you're at right now is
she's very low in calories. With what she was saying, you know, she's feeling weak, she can't sleep. Those are all, you know, she can't sleep. That's typical signs she's just way under eating, and you know, she's too far in a negative energy balance. I would recommend that she needs to reverse out of, you know, it's going to take her, I would say, probably. Typically with females, I usually recommend going a little bit slower than a male with reversing out of a low-calorie diet. She's eventually going to need to work up to around 2,200 calories. That's moderately active. 2,200 calories with 155 grams of protein. She could probably go a little bit lower than that. If she goes a little bit lower, she's probably going to have to increase her carbs a little bit. I would say at least 75, 80 grams of fat and, you know, 2 to 225 grams of carbs, depending upon where she lets her fats fall. I do think that it's pretty important that she does increase her fats a little bit, though, because I think that they're very too low for, you know, for her hormone function and so forth, especially if she's been at those levels for an extended period of time. So.
I agree, and I mean that's spot on. That's a gram of protein per pound of body weight, 155 grams of protein, and 220 grams of carbs just to start off as a goal right now. And then wherever the fat falls, 50 grams is a little bit too low. Now you could hang out around there, but right now it's probably a good idea to go and increase. So I agree with April on all of that. She says the calories are killing her. So
what I would actually, from where she's at now, from where she has been averaging, I think if she lowers her protein down, she can probably start out with around 200 grams of carbs because her carbs haven't been too low, and basically just work on, make it easier for her to just work on slowly increasing her fats up and actually just work the fat and macronutrients up weekly, you know, and that type of thing, rather than, sometimes it gets a little confusing when you're reverse dieting to, well, okay, this week I need to increase carbs by 10 grams, fats by 5 grams. You know, it kind of can become confusing and a headache if you're not very familiar with, you know, the process and how to do it. But where she's at now, because she hasn't been extremely low carb, then I think that she can probably just adjust her protein down, adjust her carbs to 200 grams, start out with, you know, maybe start out with 55, 60 grams of fat, and then slowly working that up over the course of, you know, a month or so.
And that should answer your last question, Ashley. She says, okay, got it. Yeah, and, you know, that's just a guideline. You do want to go at a pace that's comfortable for you. I know what it's like to undereat and to feel like, oh, I have all this food to eat. What am I going to do? And I always say this, and I believe it's 100% true, that the amount of food that you can eat is an adaptation. So wherever you start off, you kind of have to go up, and it's going to be a little bit uncomfortable. But when you get to that point, you know that there's kind of like that you're at a wall, and as soon as you get over it, she says, oh, I can eat. All right, then no problem. She says Ashley says she wants to move up to training 5 days a week. Then pretty much what it's going to come down to is you gradually increasing your calories, and then maybe a month, 2 months from now, start going 5 times a week. And you know, I'm going to say, because we're going to have to follow up with you, get a hold of a moderator in the forum, post a question, and ask someone to come and take a look at things in maybe a month or so, because 2,200 calories, it probably won't support the level of activity that you want. So you're going to want to go up from there. I'd probably like to see you eating 2,800 calories if possible, but it can't happen overnight because it's going to make you bloated, and it will help. You will add extra body fat, and it's just not going to be the best idea. So,
Yeah,
22.
I agree. I would actually work on getting the calorie standpoint up prior to attempting to add in another rest day. I mean, add in another training day. I would try to work that up first because that would be the smartest. Also, I did not address her control days. On her control days, rest days, ideally you would want to keep your protein and your fats basically the same as your training days. In some cases, you can, if you're happy with your weight and you don't want to see your weight go down, then you can adjust your fats up and your carbs down on your rest days. If you want to see your weight slowly taper down, then I would recommend keeping your protein and your fats the same as your training days and just reduce your carbohydrates down to around 100, 125 grams. Basically just a level that feels comfortable.
Yeah, and I want to emphasize that that's to create a calorie deficit. It's not that the lower carbs are necessarily better for losing fat or for maintaining a specific body composition or a specific level of body fat, but it's just you get so much more energy out of fat, and it's so much more satisfying to eat that it can actually promote a calorie deficit, so that you're not sitting there going, oh man, I'm hungry. The more fat you eat, like bumping it up a little bit, can actually not only make up for the massive calorie deficit that like a 50% drop in carbs can create, but it'll help you from feeling hungry. So I hope that's a satisfactory response and that you can get moving on that, Ashley. I'm gonna close out some of these questions. But yeah, a gram of protein per pound of body weight. And she says, great, that's helpful. I'd like to get under 20% body fat eventually. It just doesn't have to happen this year. And that's a great attitude to have, because if you rush it, you're going to have bad results. Like, no way around it. Even people that are entirely focused on getting as lean as possible, even competitive bodybuilders, they take 20 weeks to diet to drop, maybe like 7% body fat. Because it's not necessarily about being a body fat percentage. You want to maintain as much muscle tissue as you can as you drop weight. So you have a good attitude, good head on your shoulders, Ashley, and I think you're going to accomplish whatever goals you set yourself on. So I'm going to move on to a question from Sarah again, and then from Glenda, and we're going to shut this puppy down because it's 9 o'clock or 8 o'clock, wherever you are in the country or the world. Sarah says she's doing both Juggernaut BS and deadlift in a workout. Heavy sets. Last is 5x3 of 85% of 1 rep max. Didn't have time to do accessory lifts. Eat my entire 250 grams of prescribed carbohydrates, or should I do less? If so, how much less?
I would say eat it all.
I'd say eat it all too.
Yeah, if you're doing 85% of your 1 rep max, 5 sets of 3, I would say eat it all.
Yeah, I would say don't think about weightlifting especially as like an energetic thing. Don't think about it like, oh, I lifted these weights, I'm so pooped. Because as far as energy goes, the duration of an event kind of dictates how much energy in terms of calories you're going to burn. So what you did for your heavy lifting is actually not very energy intensive. But to get a positive adaptation out of it so that you get stronger, you need to provide yourself with a lot of fuel. This is something in the Science and Practice of Strength and Conditioning by Vladimir Zatsiorsky. He talks about this. This is confirmed by research. It's not like suspected. It's not really a theory, or it is a theory, but it's not. It holds a lot of water. Doing heavy lifting in the immediate term doesn't degrade that much protein, and it doesn't ask a lot. Protein will rebuild very quickly after a heavy lift, but over time it demands a lot of energy. So if you don't eat your carbs and you cut your calories, then you're essentially you're screwing yourself out of getting stronger. And if you can do your accessories, that doesn't necessarily mean that you need to add in carbs either. So she said, I knew she'd say that because apparently April's all about eating the carbs. And,
Sarah, if you don't eat all your carbs, you can just kiss your gains goodbye.
yeah, pretty much. Well, but it's not the carbs. It's the total calories.
Exactly.
All right. I know that helps. That's pretty much a simple answer right there. Lift heavy, eat carbs. But our last question of the night is going to come from Glenda Reynolds. I apologize. Sometimes my tongue does that. She says, I have a question regarding eating my pre-workout meal the night before, and should it be slow or fast? April?
My thoughts are, if I assume that Glenda is going into her training session early AM and she's doing it fasted. If so, me personally, I prefer, I can either go slow or I can either use, say, sweet potatoes or white rice with dinner. I usually have a carb snack before I go to bed, and I use cereal. I actually use a faster digesting carb source right before I go to bed because it allows me to crash and I sleep like a rock. I find that if I use, say, something like oatmeal or anything like that before I go to bed, then it kind of sustains my energy. Basically, my insulin levels are raised longer, and it sustains my energy longer, and it kind of disturbs my sleep a little bit. Either way, you're going to either starchy carb, it's going to get stored as glycogen in your muscles. So I think either one would work. I don't know what you would use, James, before you go to bed, or.
My opinion is, if performance is your concern, glycogen synthesis is slow. Like, it can take you up to 48 hours with conventional food, with real food, to completely restore every little bit of glycogen in your muscle and liver and wherever else you happen to store it, because it can go places other than that too. But I say go for fast stuff unless, like you said, it disturbs your sleep. I personally, if I want to sleep really well, I will eat a sweet potato because it knocks me on my butt. It puts me to sleep, and in tandem, sleep is very important for recovery of your nervous system. So if you're especially if you're focused on performance, you need to get good sleep. So look at it kind of like that too. The speed of digestion and ultimately resynthesis of glycogen is important. But you have to look at it in terms of how it's going to affect your sleep, because if you, I don't know, let's say you get up the next morning and you're like, crap, I could barely sleep last night because that oatmeal that I ate kept me up because I just felt like I was buzzing and I wanted to go out and do some stuff. Well, then it kind of defeated the point. So I would personally go for something that makes you sleepy, and look at it like this. You eat a sweet potato, it may digest a little bit slower because it's going to have more fiber than a white potato usually. And it might have more fiber than oatmeal. I'm not entirely sure. But all of that stuff aside, she says sleeping is not a problem for me. I can sleep most anywhere, anytime. Then I must recommend that you go for fast digesting carbs. And if you can in the morning, I don't know if you're a morning eater, but if you can get up and you can have something before you train, then that's going to be good too. I mean, it sounds like if you can sleep whenever you want, then it sounds like you're probably not affected as much by blood sugar levels going up and down. I am. If my blood sugar is low, it ruins my personality and my mood and everything. I can't sleep. I can't train very hard. So I have to be kind of more careful about that. Don't know why. But
I think they call that hangry, don't they?
Yes, they call it hangry. I get hangry, but then if my blood sugar is elevated, I tend to not have any energy at all. So that's why my pre-workout shake. That's why I include oats, because I want to keep it really low carb, or I want to keep it really low fat, so that it's in quickly. But if I don't have the fat in there, I don't really get a sustained release of energy. I kind of like I just sweat a lot and want to go to bed while I'm training. And that doesn't really help me much. So she says her workout is at 5 a.m. eating before is challenging. I like the idea of the fasting before workout. This is a new concept for me. I'm going to say then 5 a.m. is way too early to eat for me too. I would eat as late as you can in the evening, since you said it's not going to bother you, and go for white rice, white potatoes, and try to keep your fat at a minimum in your last meal, and get up and go and train. And the closer you have a meal to that workout, the better. And Glenda, that's going to be our last question. I want to thank everyone. You're welcome. I want to thank everyone for being here. I want to remind you guys that we have a team challenge starting in just a couple days now on August 1st. So if you haven't signed up for that, get a hold of a moderator, get a hold of somebody in the forum, and I mean, April might be a good person.
Yeah, we have a thread posted up for participants, and it looks like we've had a lot of inquiries in regards to members who can't get their body fat officially tested and they still want to participate. And it looks like that we are officially going to have a separate team for the unofficial participants. So basically, they'll still get the help and the guidance. They just won't be eligible for any type of prizes or anything. So, you know, it's still a win-win in my book. So.
Yeah. What more valuable prize is there than being leaner and stronger and feeling awesome? Glenda says, what if we were doing the challenge that started in May?
If you were doing the performance-based challenge, I actually already discussed this with Paul. If you want to participate in the fat loss challenge officially, then you will need to get a body fat test done prior to the fat loss challenge, but you'll also need to get another one done at the end of the performance challenge. So they are going to overlap somewhat, but you know, unfortunately that's the rules in regards to that.
It makes sense though. So and you can test with a bipod, hydrostatic weight, or what's the third option?
The DEXA scan.
DEXA scan. And she says, okay, nice way to see how you're doing. Yeah, absolutely. So that answers that. And what was I saying? Oh yeah, thank you guys for being here. I love doing these. I love getting to spend some time communicating with my friend April, who is normally just a text and a picture, but now she's a video. And now I'm a video. And I hope you guys have enjoyed the webinar. If you have any more questions, follow us up in the forum. And I think that pretty much covers everything. So, good night, everybody.
Good night, everybody.